The full release of Overwatch 2 isn't coming this year, and if I had to guess, at least mid-2023, maybe even 2024. Now, this is not new information, as this has already been stated in the Q3 earnings report back in November 2021 and implied with Aaron Keller, the current game director, saying that there would be multiple beta waves throughout the year with the PvP portion of the game only. And I just wanted to set that record straight because a lot of people who haven't kept up with the Overwatch community are a little confused and understandably unimpressed with the first Overwatch 2 beta.
The haters have been calling this game Overwatch 1.5. I gotta say, haters, you guys are stupid. You don't know what you're talking about. This is more like Overwatch 1.1.
That's why I'm here today to help temper your Overwatch 2 expectations and give you a summary of what we know so far, what to expect, and my thoughts on everything, because my livelihood literally depends on this game. It's always better to under-promise and over-deliver. That's why we just had our first taste of the Overwatch 2 beta between April 27th to May 17th. Nearly 3 years after it was announced, 2 menu buttons, 1 new hero, and a half-functioning UI that was missing a portrait half the time. And that's okay, because this was never meant to be the full Overwatch 2 experience. People just didn't have the right information and expectations, which was more of a marketing problem than anything, because the announcement of the PvE and PvP being decoupled was embedded in a developer update video only a few months back on March 10th of this year. Echo came out over 2 years ago in April 2020, which was the last real content update in Overwatch 1. Most of the team had switched over to Overwatch 2 to accelerate its development, essentially abandoning Overwatch 1. I really want to believe Overwatch 2 had an original timeline of being complete by 2022 with a few updates to Overwatch 1 along the way to keep current players invested. However, a lot of events happened that definitely had an effect on their ability to commit to game development. I mean, first we had COVID and the switch to remote work. I mean, getting the logistics right with comfort, security, and workflow must have been a nightmare at this time. I mean, Jeff Kaplan literally did a dev update in his backyard. Then Blizzard was the face of a bunch of controversies, sexual harassment lawsuits, and employees just outright leaving, such as the executive producer and even the game director, Jeff Kaplan. Changes in leadership in any corporate structure creates massive amounts of stress on meeting deadlines because goals, tasks, and progress gets thrown out into a giant disarray, and it takes a long time to rehire new talent and bring them up to speed on current projects. And I'm sure many of my viewers watching or listening to this right now who work in corporate are nodding like, yep, that's relatable. Now, I'd like to think I'm a logical and reasonable person, so I get it. I get why you, as a consumer or longtime Overwatch player, is upset because it feels unacceptable with the delays and mismanagement. But I also get why the game was taking so long. I don't think it's ever been a question of the Overwatch team not working hard because we know they are. The Overwatch IP is so good and so strong, it's just, I think their hands are a little tied. So, to recap, March 10, 2022, Aaron Keller, the new game director, announces the first PvP beta playtest would be coming soon, with multiple beta waves coming out throughout the year. Fast forward to April 27th, Beta Wave 1, people were getting access to the game by Twitch drops, the Overwatch category ballooned to over 1.4 million viewers, your boy had 50,000 people and counting tuning in on Twitch, my YouTube views were revived, and I was basking in the glory for 3 weeks. Then it was back to reality on May 17th, and going back to Overwatch 1 with all the extra shields and stuns and shit flying at you felt terrible once you had a taste of 5v5 with all the balance changes. I'm a firm believer now that the reduction in CC and the loss of a tank was the correct decision. On the same day the Beta Wave 1 ended, Blizzard announced an upcoming event on Thursday, June 16th, where they're going to talk about their plans for the next few months, including the second PvP beta wave. This event should cover instructions for how to get access to the next round of Overwatch 2. However, I had 4 issues with this. 1, it really looks like someone took 2 minutes to slap together this graphic. I mean, look at the font and the lack of spacing to the left side. Hello? Graphic designers watching this are probably reasonably bothered by this. My second issue was that it's an announcement of an announcement, as in they're announcing that on June 16th, they'll have more announcements, which is so cryptic in nature. It's frustrating, man, because that also implies that issue number 3, we could be stuck with Overwatch 1 for a lot longer than we originally anticipated. My fourth issue is that June 16th is actually 3 days before Father's Day, and you probably don't have a gift yet, which is why today's video is sponsored by Ridge Wallet. Say goodbye to your old bulky wallet and say hello to Ridge Wallet, which is a modern compact solution for your cards and cash that comes in over 30 different colors and styles. I've got the aluminum matte white in my hands right now, which looks and feels fantastic. It's strong and sturdy, has RFID blocking plates, and is the perfect Father's Day gift. You can use my code CARQ for 15% off or my link at ridge.com/CARQ in the description below. In an effort to communicate more with the community, Blizzard gave us some analytics on May 24th that gave us some insight on hero performance and pick rates during the first beta wave. Honestly, it's a really interesting read, and I'll link in the description below, but it had a lot of graphs. Graphs such as overall usage rate, which saw Sojourn at number 1 early on that tapered off as the beta went on. They also had a weighted usage rate graph to account for the number of heroes in its specific role, which more accurately portrays relative interest in the new heroes and reworks. They had an unmirrored win rate graph to show off how a hero performs against teams without the same hero on the other side. Otherwise, it would result in a 50% win rate since one side is going to win while the other side is going to lose, right? So it's actually interesting to see Symmetra at the top here, despite having a mediocre impression on players that tried her out in the new 5v5 setting. That's why context with data is so important, because people tend to play Symmetra in situations where she's actually more likely to win, like defending first points of maps, and would otherwise switch off on phases of maps where she's not as optimal. Here's the unmirrored win rate for supports, highlighting those that receive balance changes, and you can see Zenyatta jumping like 5% after the addition of his snap kick passive plus the HP buff. This might have been the most drastic one of all. Here's the tanks, highlighting the ones that receive changes, with Winston leading the way and the other 3 of Zarya, Ball, and Hog equalizing around 50%. Finally, here's the damage heroes who receive changes, with Soldier having a giant drop due to his massive nerf in the first balance patch, which, by the way, the Overwatch League is on the first patch before that change, which is why you'll likely still see him played every week until the next stage. Overall, the biggest takeaway here is that hero balance is multifaceted and difficult to decipher because there's so much context needed with every statistic. While I appreciate the open communication and insight from Blizzard here, I'm not sure 3 weeks of unbalanced quick play can give the healthiest look into a hero's balance. Like, some of the balance changes only had a few days to marinate, which is not enough time. Baptiste, for example, didn't see much of a change despite the unreal regen burst buff in the last 4 days. Mark my words, if this stays for the next beta wave, he's going to be the meta pick with Rhino or Orisa comps. Other issues with the stats that come out of this beta wave are lopsided lobbies, you're only allowed to play 1/2 of a map in quick play, and heroes that may have a high usage rate could just be a byproduct of simply being more fun to play. This eventually becomes an issue of hero design, because some heroes will simply just never be as popular by nature despite how strong they are balance-wise. That's why I actually fear they'll take this data too literally, so I implore you, the community, to also vocalize constructively on why so-and-so hero needs buffs, nerfs, changes, reworks. And I always think back to the Apex community where one dev was really adamant that Watson was strong because of her win rate, and he got absolutely blasted by the Apex community. So much so that he actually left due to harassment. So don't go that far, Overwatch community. You're better than that. It's kind of the equivalent of them looking at Symmetra's 60% win rate and going like, yup, she's overpowered and she needs more nerfs. But thankfully, candid articles and communication like this lets us know that they're actually not that dense, and they are looking at context. Okay, so now we're in June, and on June 1st, a big piece of news came out of nowhere, where the Overwatch devs, Jeff Goodman and Josh No, joined a live stream with creators ML7 and SVB for an hour to talk about the state of the game balance, some upcoming changes, and what they hope to expect from the next beta wave. Honestly, this live stream wasn't marketed at all. In fact, I think it was only tweeted out like an hour before it actually happened, and some of you watching my video here probably had no idea this event even occurred. Now, if you ask me, I think Blizzard did this to deliberately stay aligned with the original goal of more open communication, but only directed it to the current Overwatch community, like the ones that are actively keeping up, because we're the ones who would find out about this. They know the general public was disappointed with the first beta wave and didn't have their expectations met, so it may have been done in an attempt to shield themselves from criticism. That being said, for those that missed it, I listened to the entire live stream and have summarized some key takeaway points here so you don't have to. Hero design and rework philosophy. Jeff and Josh said hero reworks can be really tricky to handle since you can't really make everybody happy, regardless of what you do. That's true. When they were reworking Bastion, they figured they couldn't buff or nerf him because of the backlash they would get from the Bastion mains, like all 5 of them, and to the people who hate playing against him, so the only reasonable change they could make was to rework his kit to make him less oppressive and more engaging to play across all elos. That's been Blizzard's general philosophy for all the hero reworks so far. Orisa felt really slow and clunky to play against in Overwatch 1, so they added some mobility and engagement tools to her kit. Bastion needed to be able to move around since the game is going to be much faster than the current live version. We know the devs made the decision to nerf CC from almost every non-tank hero, and that really changed the way Cassidy specifically plays with his team, for example. He doesn't have the flank protection ability he had before with his flashbang, meaning his ability to peel for his teammates is a lot weaker than it used to be. Jeff Goodman doesn't imagine they're going to give him his stun back anytime soon. Instead, the dev philosophy seems to be making certain flankers weaker to accommodate, which is why we saw Tracer get a nerf from 6 to 5 damage per pellet. Doesn't seem like a lot, but this is like a 16% reduction in her total output. Hero balance. Junkrat is actually getting his original steel trap back in the next beta wave. Jeff said it's not as oppressive as the other hard stuns, as it's a bit more counterable, easy to find, you can destroy it, and it doesn't completely lock you out of using your abilities. This is one of the good aspects of the live game that shouldn't have been changed in the first place, and they're gonna go back on it. Jeff also said there's no hard rules for what counts as a bug or tech, so they decided Mercy's Superjump wasn't as game-breaking as Genji's Ledge Dash, for example, and they implemented it into the beta as a core feature of Mercy's kit. So near the end of beta wave 1, you could press crouch to cancel Guardian Angel to automatically super jump for you. Players only had 4 days to test it, and there was a lot of mixed feedback for both the inputs and the likely unintended Giga Jump. In beta wave 2, Mercy will no longer have that crouch cancel, so instead of pressing a button to launch from Guardian Angel, now flying from Guardian Angel will actually auto-launch you when reaching the target, and pressing a button will cancel that auto-launch, effectively reversing it based on my understanding. Now don't freak out, Mercy mains. Jeff admitted that this is something they're experimenting with and are looking for feedback on, so like if more people are dying to the auto-launch super jump than the iteration in beta wave 1, then they'll actually go back to the drawing board, so give us some good constructive feedback. Finally, they also leaked that they were looking at Moira and were experimenting with minor reworks, such as giving her a purge effect to remove enemy buffs, or a nullify to like remove damage buffs or movement speed buffs as long as the ability was on them. The most important tidbit of information here is that they scrapped it, but they did say if the community asks for it, they may revisit it. Blizzard has since released a dev blog about Moira and her rework philosophy, which I'll get to right after this. This was just quoted from the live stream. The most interesting part that I found from this live stream was the question of, will we still see balance changes in Overwatch 1? Josh said that they don't want to commit to anything for it yet, but he would like to do a balance patch for Overwatch 1. A lot of time is spent on meeting deadlines that if they were to make a patch, like they wouldn't want to pull someone else from like the visual effects or even the sound team to make these changes when they're like super hyper focused on Overwatch 2. They do eventually want to make a big tuning pass, but not enough to make the live game too arcadey, as they are still a live service game. Questions they ask themselves all the time are, if they make X change into Overwatch 1, would they want to move those changes into Overwatch 2? Like someone like Orisa, who already had a giant rework in Overwatch 2. I found this answer interesting because it basically confirms the speculation of the original Overwatch 1 team's resources being completely allocated to Overwatch 2 with no one available to implement content anymore to the original game. Meaning, yeah, it's abandoned. And buckle up, because we're in it for the long haul, fellas. Alright, and the last update we had was June 7th, yesterday from the time of this upload. The community has been crying for Moira reworks for years with complaints that she doesn't provide enough utility in team fights other than a ton of healing and decent damage, low skill cap, yada yada yada. But in this article, they talked about what the process looked like for their iterative approach to trying out new hero abilities and designs. So for Moira, they tried giving her a pain converter ability first, which gave teammates damage reduction and filled her heal or piss meter. That felt too situational, so they came up with the idea of Purge and Nullify, which I mentioned earlier, two abilities that were linked to her damage orb and debuffed enemy damage and movement, but it was a little difficult to figure out what specific debuff she could apply. The version they're actually working on now is a projectile skill shot called Weaken, which applies a debuff to the enemy heroes but requires aim and tracking to land. Hopefully we'll see that in the next beta wave, but that's basically it for the news and updates. So what should we expect next week on the big June 16th announcement of an announcement? Well, they said event, so I assume it'll be a stream of some kind with a conversation with the devs, maybe some OWL pros or celebrities as a marketing event for the next beta wave. They didn't explicitly say that this was actually the day when the second wave was beginning, but they'll probably announce it then along with hopefully a roadmap. Personally, I'm hoping we'll learn about a new support hero being released as a support main, and getting access to some of the maps they've been talking about since they announced Overwatch 2. Hopefully they update the map pool by bringing back like Rialto, for example, and they give us Gothenburg or maybe Rio de Janeiro and give us something new to play with. Maybe even a flushed out singular PvE mission to try, because wouldn't that be something? Because we were actually teased with the new enemy AI and design in the sneak peek over a year ago, in case you forgot. Whew. I love Overwatch. It literally changed my life. I freaking Overwatch tattoos, man. I got Zenyatta and Ana here on my arm, and I really want this game to continue to succeed. There's light at the end of the tunnel, so thank you to whoever listened to this entire piece, and an even bigger thanks for those who have been watching and supporting my content for over 6 years. Blizzard, the ball's in your court. Bring us the masterpiece we know you're capable of producing.